At my mom's birthday, everything seemed normal. The air smelled of her famous fruit tart, the one she baked every year, and Dad was already boring the guests with his endless stories about his glory days. I remember laughing politely, holding a glass of wine, pretending everything was fine, because that's what I'd been doing my whole life around them. Then my phone buzzed. It was Freya. My 10-year-old never called me during family gatherings. "Mom," her voice trembled through the speaker, barely a whisper, "get out." "Now." My heart skipped a beat. "What happened?" I asked, stepping away from the noise. Her next words made my blood run cold. "Get out of the house." I didn't argue. I didn't ask again. I grabbed my bag, mumbled something about feeling unwell, and walked out the front door without looking back. The air outside felt heavier, colder. I sat in my car, trembling, staring at the house that had raised me, the same house that now felt like a trap. My mother's laughter drifted faintly through the window, light and carefree, as if nothing had changed. But something had. I didn't know what Freya had seen or heard, but I trusted her instinct more than my parents' smiles. The drive home was a blur of headlights and panic. My phone rang again. It was Chris, my best friend. "Ness, you okay?" he asked, his tone steady but worried. I told him I didn't know. I didn't know anything anymore, except that something inside me was breaking. That night, I couldn't sleep. Freya was quiet, curled beside me, clutching her stuffed bear like she was 5 again. Around midnight, I finally asked, "Sweetheart, why did you tell me to leave?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Grandma and Grandpa were in the kitchen with Aunt Bianca," she whispered. "They didn't see me, but I heard them talking about you. They said they were going to make sure you lost me, that they'd tell everyone you were crazy. They said they'd make sure Dad got me back." I stared at her, numb, my breath catching in my throat. "Why?" I managed to choke out. Freya hesitated. "Because they want your money. They said you'd come crawling back when you needed them." I couldn't speak. My parents, my own parents, had plotted to ruin me, to tear me apart from the only person who truly loved me unconditionally. All the years I'd worked myself to the bone, paid their bills, kept their lights on, funded Bianca's useless business ventures. And this was how they repaid me, by planning to destroy me. I held Freya close as she cried, promising her she'd never have to go back there again. I meant it with every cell in my body. The next morning, as the sun filtered through the blinds, I realized I had already crossed a line I couldn't return from. That house, that family, those ties, they were done. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing for certain. They'd made the biggest mistake of their lives. 3 months later, the same people who schemed to take my daughter away were the ones begging me to forgive them. But forgiveness was no longer something I had to give. The car was silent, except for the faint hum of the engine. Streetlights flickered across Freya's face, her small hands clutching her seatbelt. I could feel her fear filling the car like thick smoke, but I didn't speak. I just drove. Block after block, I tried to steady my breathing, waiting for her to say something, anything. Finally, I pulled into an empty parking lot behind a closed grocery store. The lights above us buzzed weakly, and the night air pressed against the windshield. I turned to her, my voice low. "Freya, talk to me. What happened?" She stared straight ahead, eyes glassy. "You're not safe there, Mom," she whispered. I reached for her hand, but she pulled back slightly, shaking. Grandma, Grandpa, and Aunt Bianca were in the kitchen. They didn't know I was there. Her words came out in broken pieces, each one heavier than the last. "They said they were going to make everyone believe you're unstable, that you shouldn't have me." I froze. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard. "They said they'd tell people you're too emotional, that you yell, that you can't take care of me right. They even said they could get the court to give me back to Dad." My chest tightened. "Vincent." She nodded. "They said if he had me, you'd have to work again, that you'd make more money, and they could keep living the way they used to." I leaned back, my pulse hammering. It didn't sound real. My own family talking about me like I was a problem to be solved, a wallet to be refilled. "Did they say how they'd do it?" I asked quietly. Freya hesitated, tears sliding down her cheeks. "They talked about putting something in your purse. Aunt Bianca said nobody would believe you if they found it." Her voice cracked. Grandpa laughed. "He said it would prove what kind of mother you are." The steering wheel felt cold under my hands. My mind raced through every family dinner, every fake smile, every "we just want to help you" speech they'd given me. None of it was real. They weren't helping me, they were hunting me. I turned off the car and let the silence stretch between us. Freya sniffled softly, then whispered. I didn't mean to listen, but I couldn't move. I was scared. I reached over and finally pulled her into my arms. "You did the right thing," I murmured. "You saved us." She clung to me, her small frame shaking against mine. The parking lot around us was empty, but I could almost hear the echo of their voices. My mother's calm, manipulative tone, Bianca's snide laughter, my father's quiet approval. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring out at the dark horizon. Every illusion I'd held about family shattered one by one. I wasn't just betrayed, I was targeted. My parents didn't want a daughter, they wanted control. And they were willing to destroy me to get it. I turned the key, started the engine again, and drove off with one silent promise in my chest. They'd never get another chance. When I look back, it feels like I was trained to give before I even learned to ask. I was 15 when Mom handed me the electric bill and said, "You're old enough to help." No, thank you. No question, just expectation. I worked weekends at a diner after school, sliding my paycheck across the table while Bianca twirled in a new dress Dad bought her. "You're the responsible one," they'd say, smiling like it was a compliment. It wasn't. It was a sentence. Every part of my life was built around what they needed. When my friends were applying for college loans, I was filling out forms for Mom's medical insurance. When Bianca got a car for her 18th birthday, I was still riding the bus to work, paying off the family debt that no one but me seemed to owe. I remember one summer when Bianca wanted to go to Italy with her friends. Mom called me at work, her voice sweet and sharp. "You'll cover part of her ticket, right? You make more than we do." I was 19, barely scraping by, but I agreed. Because saying no meant guilt, cold silence, and that terrible phrase, "After all we've done for you." When I got my first real job in tech, they celebrated like it was their victory. "We raised a successful woman," Dad boasted to anyone who'd listen, while Mom started sending me lists, mortgage payments, credit card balances, emergency expenses. I told myself it was temporary, that once they caught up, they'd stop asking. They never did. Each year, the numbers got bigger, the gratitude smaller. Vacations, remodels, new phones, all charged to my sense of duty. And Bianca? She floated through life untouched, her failures softened by my money. There were moments I tried to set boundaries. "I can't keep doing this," I told Mom once. She sighed dramatically. "Bianca doesn't have your stability, Vanessa. You should be proud to help." Proud. That word twisted in my chest. Pride wasn't what I felt. It was exhaustion, the kind that seeps into your bones and convinces you love means sacrifice. Even after my divorce, when I was rebuilding from nothing, they still called. "You can't let the family fall apart," Dad said when I hesitated to send them money. "You're the strong one." He always said it like praise, but it was just another chain. They never asked how I was holding up. They didn't care that I was alone with a child, trying to survive. What mattered was that I kept giving. Sitting in that car with Freya's words echoing in my head, it all made perfect sense. The betrayal at Mom's birthday wasn't sudden. It was the final act in a story that began long ago. I had been useful, not loved. A wallet, not a daughter. They'd built their comfort on my sacrifices, and when I finally tried to step back, they plotted to destroy me. That realization didn't bring tears this time, it brought clarity. My whole life, I'd been trying to earn their love. I just hadn't realized it was never for sale. Chris didn't ask why I showed up at his door in the middle of the night, eyes red, Freya asleep in the back seat. He just opened the door wider and said softly, "Come in." His apartment smelled like coffee and safety. I tucked Freya onto his couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like detergent and old books. Chris handed me tea, no questions, just presence. I hadn't realized how badly I needed silence that wasn't laced with judgment. For the first time in days, I breathed. Morning came too fast. Freya left for school with Chris, who promised to keep an eye on her. I drove straight to my parents' neighborhood, my pulse a steady drumbeat of fury. The sky was pale, washed out, like it knew something ugly was about to happen. They were both in the driveway, pretending surprise when they saw me. "Vanessa," Mom said, smiling too easily. "Why didn't you come back last night?" I didn't waste time. "You know exactly why," I said, stepping closer. "You think I wouldn't find out what you were planning? To declare me unfit? To hand Freya to Vincent so I'd come crawling back?" Dad frowned, that tired, disappointed look he used whenever I spoke with conviction. "You're being dramatic," he said. "No one said that." I laughed, a sound that didn't feel like mine. "Freya heard everything. Every word. You were going to plant something in my purse. You were going to ruin me." Mom's face tightened, but she stayed calm, tilting her head like a therapist. Sweetheart, you've always misunderstood things. We were discussing hypotheticals. You need to calm down. That word, calm, snapped something in me. Don't, I warned. Don't call me emotional when you were plotting to take my child. My hands trembled, not from fear but from disgust. Dad's voice rose, defensive. We were trying to protect her. You work too much, you're exhausted. Protect her? I cut him off. By destroying her mother? By siding with Vincent? By turning my own daughter into a pawn? The neighbors' curtains twitched, but I didn't care. Let them watch. Let them hear. Mom crossed her arms, sighing. You're twisting everything. We love you. You just don't see what's best for you. The pity in her tone burned worse than her betrayal. No, I said, voice steady now. You love control. You love money. And you hate that I stopped giving you both. For a moment, no one spoke. The wind carried the sound of a barking dog somewhere down the street. Then Mom said it, the line that turned my blood to ice. Families fight, Vanessa. You'll forgive us eventually. I stepped back, shaking my head slowly. No, you don't get to hurt me and call it love. You don't get to plot against me and hide behind family. I took one last look at them. Two strangers standing in the shell of what used to be home. You are dead to me. Dad started to speak, but I turned before he could. My car door slammed like punctuation at the end of a long, ugly sentence. As I drove away, I didn't cry. I didn't look back. The chain that bound me to them finally snapped, and in the silence that followed, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace, sharp and raw, but real. The first few weeks after cutting them off were a blur of long nights and rebuilding. Chris helped me find a small apartment near Freya's school. Nothing fancy, but ours. I started a new job in systems management, something steady, something mine. For a while, it felt like life was finally leveling out. Freya was smiling again. I was sleeping through the night. But peace in my world never lasted long. One morning, during a coffee break at work, I opened my phone and froze. A tagged post appeared on social media. A photo of my parents and Bianca on a beach, all smiles, cocktails in hand. Beside them stood Vincent, his arm around my mother like they'd been friends forever. The caption read, "So grateful to spend time with such a devoted father. Family is everything." The comments were full of hearts and admiration. People we knew from church, old co-workers, even relatives were congratulating them. So happy you're all getting along. Vincent deserves this. I could barely breathe. My parents, who once called him reckless and cruel, were now parading him as a hero. I scrolled further. There were more photos, Freya's old pictures reposted from my account, paired with captions about how children need both parents. It wasn't random. It was calculated. They weren't just cozying up to Vincent. They were laying groundwork, shaping a narrative where I was the problem, the unstable mother who'd cut off her poor family and kept a child from her father. When Chris saw my face, he took the phone and read silently. "They're trying to trap you," he said finally. "They're building something." I nodded, numb. I'd seen manipulation before, but this was different, organized, deliberate, cruel. I blocked every account, but the damage was already spreading. Rumors trickled through old friends, co-workers whispering about Vanessa's meltdown. Every light chipped away at the small piece I'd built. 2 weeks later, a knock rattled Chris's door. He opened it to two strangers holding badges. "Child Protective Services," one said. My heart sank before they even spoke my name. They explained they'd received an anonymous report claiming I was unstable, unemployed, and living in unsafe conditions with my daughter. The words blurred together. Freya clung to me, confused and scared. I showed them her tidy room, our kitchen, the apartment lease, my work ID, proof that I was fine, that she was safe. The agents were polite but distant, their questions rehearsed, their expressions unreadable. When they finally left, Freya hid her face in my shirt, whispering, "Did we do something wrong?" My throat tightened. "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "Someone's just trying to make us look bad." That night, Chris sat beside me on the couch, jaw tight. "You know it was them," he said. I didn't need confirmation. My parents had crossed a line that could never be redrawn. It wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was warfare. They had taken everything sacred, every ounce of love I had left for them, and turned it into ammunition. I looked at Freya asleep in her room and made a silent vow. If they wanted to drag me through hell, they'd have to face what I'd become on the way back out. The letter from the court arrived folded, heavy as a threat. Vincent had filed for partial custody, backed by statements from my parents and Bianca. My lawyer, Jordan, laid the papers on his desk like a surgeon unveiling a wound. "They're painting you as erratic," he said quietly. "Your parents' testimonies line up with his. It's strategic and it's dangerous." His calm tone didn't soften the blow. I stared at the pages, reading the lies written in legal language, claims that I was unstable, controlling, emotionally volatile. The same narrative they'd whispered behind my back now stood in black and white, stamped with authority. Jordan leaned forward. "We can counter this, but we'll need evidence, timelines, messages, proof of harassment." And, he hesitated, if Freya can testify, it could make all the difference. The thought made my stomach twist. My daughter, only 10, being dragged into a courtroom, forced to speak about people who should have protected her. "She's just a child," I said. "She shouldn't have to do this." He nodded. "I agree. But they've made her part of it already. You can't shield her from what they've started." His words sank deep, cruelly true. That night, I sat beside Freya in her room, the soft glow of her nightlight painting everything gold. She was sketching quietly, the kind of calm she used to find after nightmares. I didn't know how to begin. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "something's going to happen soon. We might have to go to court." Her pencil stopped. She looked up, studying my face. "Because of Grandma and Grandpa?" she asked. I nodded. "They're saying things that aren't true. About me. About us. The lawyer thinks you might have to talk about what you heard that day." She was silent for a long time, processing. I expected fear, maybe tears, but instead she straightened her shoulders. "If I tell the truth, will they stop lying?" I swallowed hard. "Maybe not right away. But the judge will hear you. That matters." She reached over, placed her small hand on mine, and said simply, "Then I'll do it." Her voice didn't tremble. There was a steadiness in her that startled me, a strength I hadn't realized she'd grown into. I tried to smile, though my heart felt like it was breaking. "You shouldn't have to be this brave," I whispered. She squeezed my hand. "You're brave every day, Mom. I learned it from you." Later, after she fell asleep, I sat by the window, the city lights blurring through my tears. Every memory of my parents' manipulation, every cruel word, every guilt trip, they all burned away into one clear truth. They'd underestimated us both. They thought I was weak, that Freya was just a child they could use. But they'd forgotten that love, real love, is sharper than fear. When Jordan called the next morning to confirm our court date, I didn't hesitate. "We're ready," I said. And for the first time since it all began, I meant it. The fight ahead would be brutal, but they had already taken everything from me except my resolve. That I would never let them touch. The courtroom felt colder than any place I'd ever been. I sat beside my lawyer, my palms slick with sweat, watching the people I once called family take turns trying to destroy me. My mother went first, her voice trembling just enough to sound fragile. "My daughter's always been unstable," she said, looking right at the judge but never once at me. "We only wanted to protect Freya from her moods." My stomach twisted. I stared at my hands, forcing myself not to speak, not to break. My father followed, his tone smooth, rehearsed. "Vanessa's never handled pressure well," he said. "We worried about Freya's safety. Then came Bianca, my sister. Perfect hair, perfect lies. She screamed at Mom, threatened to ruin us. I saw how she treated Freya. It wasn't normal. Each word hit like a slap. They weren't just lying. They were erasing every good thing I'd ever done. I felt the air leave my lungs when the judge nodded for my lawyer to call the next witness. "Your Honor," my lawyer said, "the plaintiff calls Freya Whitford." The courtroom stirred. My daughter, my little girl, stood and walked to the witness stand, small and steady, clutching the bracelet she made the night we left my parents' house. She looked so calm, so brave. "Freya," the judge said gently, "just tell the truth." Freya nodded. "Mommy never hurt me," she said clearly. "She always kept me safe." I couldn't breathe. The opposing lawyer stepped forward. "Freya, did your dad ever get angry?" Freya took a deep breath. "He threw a bottle once," she said softly. "It hit the wall near me. Mommy took me to my room and told me everything would be okay." The courtroom went dead silent. Even the judge froze. Freya looked down, then lifted her chin again. "Grandma and Grandpa told me not to tell anyone. They said if I helped Daddy, I could live with them forever." My mother's face drained of color. My father shifted, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Bianca stared at the floor. Vincent clenched his jaw, his confidence cracking for the first time. The judge frowned. "Freya, are you saying your grandparents asked you to lie?" "Yes, ma'am," Freya said quietly. They said it was just a game. To make Mommy lose. Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't cry. I just watched my daughter, my brave, beautiful girl, tell the truth they'd all tried to bury. When she finished, she walked back to me, took my hand, and whispered, "I did it, Mommy." I squeezed her hand and said, "You were so brave." The judge's voice broke the silence. "This court has heard enough. We'll reconvene tomorrow for the ruling." As the gavel fell, I stood, still holding Freya's hand. My parents couldn't look at me. Bianca's shoulders shook. Vincent looked hollow. I walked out of that courtroom without saying a single word. For the first time in years, the silence belonged to me. During the recess, I stepped into the hallway, trying to steady my breathing. My lawyer was on the phone, and Freya sat quietly beside me, coloring in her notebook. I told myself it was almost over, that the worst had already passed. Then I heard my mother's voice. Eleanor's tone was sharp, frantic. "You promised this would be easy," she hissed. "You said she wouldn't fight back." Vincent stood a few feet away, jaw tight, eyes blazing. "You think this is my fault," he snapped. "You started this. You wanted her money back. You wanted control." "Keep your voice down," Robert muttered, glancing nervously at the bailiff nearby. But Vincent didn't. He took a step closer to my mother, his voice rising. "Don't tell me what to do," he said, his tone dangerous. Then it happened so fast. He grabbed her wrist, hard enough to make her cry out. Every head turned. The bailiff moved instantly, separating them. My mother's face went pale, shock flooding her features. She yanked her hand back, trembling, staring at the red mark blooming on her skin. Vincent cursed under his breath, realizing what he'd done. "She was lying," he stammered, but no one listened. My father stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Eleanor, we need to go," he whispered, his mask finally cracking. She didn't argue. They turned away, whispering frantically to the court officer. Within minutes, they withdrew their statements, their confidence evaporating in front of everyone. I stood frozen, every muscle tense, watching the empire of lies collapse. Vincent shouted something about betrayal, about how they'd used him too, but no one cared. The judge returned to the bench, her expression unreadable, though I could see in her eyes she'd already made up her mind. When the gavel struck again, the room was silent. "Given the new evidence and the withdrawal of testimony," the judge said, her voice firm, "custody will be granted solely to Vanessa Whitford." I didn't move at first. I just sat there, the words echoing in my head. Freya looked up at me, confusion flickering across her face. Then, when it sank in, she smiled, small, soft, but real. Vincent slammed his folder shut and stormed out, the door thudding behind him. My parents were already gone. I knelt beside Freya and hugged her tightly. For the first time in years, my body didn't tremble. The fear was gone. The noise, the lies, the manipulation, all of it had burned away in one ugly public moment. As we walked out of the courthouse, the air felt lighter. I didn't need revenge anymore. The truth had done the work for me. It took months to rebuild a sense of calm, to sleep without my body jerking awake at every sound. Chris made it easier. He never asked for more than I could give. He just showed up. He fixed things around the house, made coffee every morning, and always saved the last pancake for Freya. Slowly, the silence that used to scare me became something gentle, something healing. Freya began smiling again, the kind that reached her eyes. She would curl up beside Chris on the couch, asking about constellations or how engines worked. Watching them made something inside me loosen, something that had been clenched for too long. For the first time, the three of us felt like a family built from choice, not obligation. Love with Chris wasn't sudden or loud. It crept in quietly, through shared laughter, through late-night talks that stretched until dawn. One evening, he reached for my hand across the table, and I didn't pull away. That simple touch told me everything. This was home now. A year passed before I saw their faces again. It was a Sunday morning. The sun was just breaking over the garden. When I opened the door, my parents stood there, holding a plate of pancakes, smiling as if time had erased everything. "We thought you might want to talk," my mother said, her voice trembling with false warmth. My father added, "Families fight, but they always come back together." I felt a strange calm, not anger, not even sadness, just certainty. Chris appeared behind me, his hand steady on my shoulder. Freya stood beside him, her expression fierce, protective. "You should go," Chris said quietly, his tone final. My mother blinked, caught off guard by his composure. "Vanessa, please." But I didn't answer. I simply stepped back and closed the door, leaving their words hanging in the air. The smell of their pancakes lingered for a moment, then faded as Freya opened the windows wide. Inside, the house was warm, full of light and laughter. No apologies could fix what they had broken, and I didn't need them to. I had found peace, not in their forgiveness, but in finally forgiving myself for ever thinking I needed their approval. As the three of us sat down to breakfast, Freya grinned and said, "Mom, these are way better than Grandma's." I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and answered softly, "That's because we made them with love, the real kind." I heard through neighbors that my parents' world had collapsed slowly, almost elegantly. Their friends stopped visiting after the truth about the court leaked. The charity boards they once bragged about removed their names quietly. The family gatherings they used to host every holiday became silent, the invitations never sent. Without my financial help, they sold their house, moved into a smaller place across town, and disappeared from the circles they used to adore. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile when I heard. There was no victory in their fall, only a strange stillness, the kind that comes when a storm finally ends. I used to think revenge meant fire, something loud and righteous. But it turns out, the quiet that follows truth is far more powerful. Freya thrived. Her laughter filled every room, and Chris's steady presence turned our little home into something solid. There were nights I'd watch her sleep and think about everything I almost lost. The years wasted trying to earn love from people who saw me only as a resource. That realization hurt more than their betrayal ever could. Sometimes, I wonder if they think about what they traded: control for emptiness, pride for loneliness. Maybe they do. Maybe they still believe I'll come back. But I won't. The woman they broke doesn't exist anymore. I never sought revenge. I just protected what was mine, my peace, my daughter, and the life we built from nothing. Still, part of me wonders if walking away was mercy or punishment. Did I go too far, or not far enough? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you've survived something like this, share your strength below. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories of survival, because sometimes walking away is the loudest revenge of all. Do you think I did the right thing by cutting my parents out of my life, or should I have given them another chance? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like mine, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell.